Well, here we are, Patrick. It seems really strange to me that in an 82 game season and themes and stuff we've been talking about all year, things can change so rapidly in a week. Um, every week we go through the schedule of games here and you look at where this team could go and we kind of guess how many they could win, but really a couple of really bad losses starting with a
Yep.
week ago, having that lead and blowing it in Columbus. Um, you know, I don't know when people will watch this. We're recording it on Friday afternoon. The Canucks have back to back, so obviously it'll change by the time most people see it through the weekend. But just looking at it now, even though they have one game in hand on Minnesota and two on St. Louis, and they have to climb over Calgary, 8 points behind Minnesota and 10 behind St. Louis. Is there any hope, as far as you can see, of them getting in?
No, it's over, and they know it. I had a really nice chat with Brock Besser today for a story I guess I'll probably write next week when they're on the road. Just sort of about where he's at, and the frustration, obviously, of having been in the playoffs last year, and he himself having proven something as a playoff player. And then to be this year and have nothing at all to play for. And, you look at the road trip and it's sort of all intents and purposes, on the whole, actually a pretty good road trip, but it still wasn't enough. And you look back, he said, look back at we played well against the Blues. We probably should have won that game. And the Blues have reeled off 11 wins, and like the sort of the statement of, for sort of all the, he himself, like as nice as they're playing, Blues took the bull by the horns. They won 11 straight games as we're talking right now. Like they just completely blew away the field. And the Canucks could have done that, right? Like they haven't done that this year, and that's been the story of the season. No consistency, a lot of struggles mid-season. He himself again referenced listen, I hate being. It affected me at the deadline. Like I know that I play like crap. I can't dismiss it. And now look how well I'm playing because I don't have to think about it. And that's unfortunately the story of this team this season. Is very mentally fragile, real struggles with focus, real struggles with consistency, struggles with injury. And here they are, and they aren't going to make the playoffs because they just weren't good enough in so many areas.
Well, that is the wild thing about this, and pardon the pun, no Minnesota reference there, but you and I, in doing this all year, they didn't get off to a great start off the hop.
Yeah.
They were a bit up and down all year. The Pettersson Miller stuff came to light. But we've said all along, despite all those struggles, they were in a playoff spot, most of the season. Okay, St. Louis racks off 11 in a row. You don't necessarily ever expect that from a team that you're jockeying with for the last playoff spot. Mm-hmm. But to you, we started the season talking about how their defense needed work, but now it seems like it's goal scoring. And goaltending was solid, and now it's not. Yes, you've got injuries. Yes, you had the drama. What to you has been the biggest factor in this season's disappointment?
Where to start?
If you could pick one or rank the top two.
Well, I think it's got to be the Pettersson Miller thing, right?
Except they played worse since that was resolved. That's what I mean.
I know.
I understand that too, but it's also
well, okay. How about this? The story I wrote on Friday or on Thursday, right? Who has led the Canucks forwards in scoring at 5-on-5 since January? It's Nils Höglander, right? That's.
I was going to say Pia Suter, but yeah.
But to steal the line from John Tortorella, that's great for Nils Höglander. That's not very good for us. And right, that was David Booth, the originator. But it's true, right? That's really good. But at the end of the day, their stars didn't perform. So whether that's and Pettersson is a huge factor in this, and Miller to a degree before, Miller. I had an argument with someone else about this the other day, but Miller, sure, he had 35 points in 42 games, fine, but he was bad. He was bad almost from he was having a pretty decent season. Then he went on his leave and he came back and he was just never the same. and he may have been scoring, but he wasn't impactful. He had 9 goals, right? Like he had 9 goals in 40 games or whatever it is. Like he was on, you double that's almost a career low in goals. Like he wasn't good. Pedersen wasn't good. And then
Hughes was injured. Demko's injured.
Hughes injured. They've had all these injuries, but fundamentally, the defense overall has been good enough. They just haven't scored. And that's on the 2 best players, or 2 best centers, and one of them's gone and another one's hurt. So here we are.
Yeah, I mean, St. Louis, 236 goals, Canucks 213. I did want to ask you about something here, and I hadn't actually really clued in on this until I was just poking around with some stuff. The only clubs in the West who have fewer home wins than Vancouver are Chicago and San Jose.
Yeah, like that's the other thing. It's just
like
what half home.
I mean, the Blues are 22, 14, and 3 at home.
Yeah.
The Canucks are 15, 14, and 7. Calgary, 20, 12, and 5.
Yeah.
Even Minnesota, 19, 17, and 2. Like, why?
It makes, it's a thing that's been an absolute mystery to this team. Like, look at last year. Like, that was a team that won and won and won at home, right? Like,
but what do you think it is? Like, why? Is it the emotional makeup of the team? Is it the atmosphere in the arena? Is it travel? Like, I don't understand why there's this deficit.
Atmosphere is an element to a degree. Yeah, your Canucks element. I am going to lead off. Spoiler alert. I'm going to write a column basically talking about how this season started with kicking out your main fan group. The guys that set the tone, that did create a unique atmosphere, and they're gone. Like they didn't even think of trying to retain them, and that it's been a not as good atmosphere in that building. Now, players in the end play wherever they have to play, but it is notable. Like you're right. Like last year, 27-9-5 at home. Like they're just, it's a completely different team, and it's I think the overall picture, just on the whole, home or away, just haven't been good enough. Like they haven't scored fundamentally. That's been a problem. They haven't gotten to the dirty areas as much, and they haven't shot as much. Like their shooting percentage is down a little bit. That's going to happen, but the shot volume is way down. And whether that's intentional, and the way Rick Tocchet talks is it's not intentional. And certainly the way we've seen them play the last couple of weeks, where they are driving to the net, they are getting shots from the middle, they have been scoring more. To me, goes back to what I've been saying all year, is that as much as you want to complain about how Rick Tocchet wants his team to play, it fundamentally comes down to players being able to execute. And last year they did, especially Elias Pettersson, especially JT Miller, and this year they didn't. And why that didn't happen, there's all the off-ice stuff. Sometimes you just hit a bad run. You have lacking confidence. Pettersson, has been mostly poor this year. When he's looked like he's had confidence, he's played well. He's been shooting. And for the most part, he was doing that. But, it was, in the end, that's too little too late. And this team is going to miss the playoffs because they just have not been good enough wherever they played this year.
It's funny. There's always these ethereal issues that they seem to have to fix. Like, we need more power play goals.
Yeah.
Well, we need to shore up the defense. We need a better backup goalie.
Yeah.
But it's like whack-a-mole. You fix one, and now all of a sudden you can't win at home. Now you've got this personality rupture between 2 of the team's stars.
Right.
Now you're not scoring enough goals. So you fix one problem, and then another pops up. And I don't think coming out of last season, I don't think fans would have expected the team to be where they are now, but I also don't think there would have been a conversation about, can we retain our coach of the year?
Yeah.
What's your sense on how that's going to go? I know that there's certain elements of certainty here, and there's enough smoke and out there, but on talk, it's been steadfast. Look, it's private. I'm not giving countenance to that, but what's your sense, knowing what you know?
I think it's very much a case of, where does this team go? Like, what are the moves? What's the plan for the summer? And
so show me
a little bit. Yeah. They have a contract and they're going to exercise it. Like, they want him as their coach. Does he come back? Like, cause he just say, I don't want to do the same. Yeah, that's certainly possible. There's elements of this team that clearly excite him. Right. And one of the things, there was a question that was put to him earlier this week about sort of the state of Jonathan Lecaramaki. And he, hasn't played a ton, but how is he progressing was kind of the question. And he got a bit defensive because he was just kind of like, well, what am I going to do? Play him at center? Like, who's he going to play over right now? And like, point taken. But the point, I sat back and I thought a bit about it. I'm going to write a bit about this. And this is part of why I talked to Besser. Was one of the sort of things this organization has talked about, or at least Alvin and Tocchet especially, over the last 3 years, is that it's not just what's the identity, what's the crest. It's what are your work habits? How much are you doing to make yourself better, and are you taking direction on how to make yourself better? And you can look at Quinn Hughes, who clearly has bought into that, right? That there are things that the coaches see in him, or whoever's seeing him, and saying you can be better than you've been, and he's done that. Last year anyway, Brock Besser. I would say on the whole, I think Brock Besser is a better two-way player. He still isn't the greatest skater in the world, but he's a better two-way player than he's ever been. And I think that makes a difference. The obvious outlier in this has been Elias Pettersson, and we know they're frustrated with him. And Rick Tocchet, sees a guy that, if this is his number one center, that's where your question lies. Does he believe this guy can take his game to the level he needs to get to? And if he does, then he probably will stay. And if he doesn't, I think then he won't. So that's kind of the equation there is how do guys buy in? And so the young players that are currently buying in is something I think that he appreciates. Here's another bit that I'll give out here, and then I'll expound upon this. But like Brock Besser made the point, says all these young guys, like when they're at the hotel, they go on the first bus. So people understand there are 2 buses to deliver you from the hotel to the rink, if you're going to do that way. And he's like, they all get on the first bus. And he's like, I didn't do that. Like the young guys, we would all take the second bus. And I kind of said, well, does that mean in hindsight you wish? And he said, no. Like in the end, he was who he was. But there is a notable thing there. Like that to me is a message from the coaching staff. Is like, guys, get to the rink and get to work. And so, okay, he'll be glad to see that. Now it's about delivering. It's one thing. It's one thing to sort of show up and be at work. It's another thing to actually be putting it to good use.
What are you saying, Patrick?
I haven't been working as long as you, Paul, but I've been working a long time, and I know what it's like to have to show up every day.
It's a grind. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because there's enough examples through all sports, whether it's a 6th rounder Tom Brady or a Steph Curry in the hours that everyone who plays professionally is immensely skilled. Like even your 4th liners. But the one thing that makes the great players great is the attention to detail. Mm-hmm. And whether that's your diet, your sleep, just your after hours habits, your practices. Mm-hmm. There's so many examples of ultra talented players around the world in every sport, including hockey, of not fulfilling their potential because they didn't do the little things. And certainly your culture and your atmosphere can foster that as well. But I mean, what's your sense? We're going to get to, we'll wrap up here in a second, but we've got a ton of time to discuss what is going to happen in the offseason. But what do you think is the fastest way for this team to get back into contention? Is it staying the course with what they have? Is it making major trades? Is it big plays in free agency? Is it a coaching change? Like, what do you think is the single most important thing that this franchise can do in the offseason to get back into contention?
Well, I mean, they've got to find a center. The options are challenging. Like, this is the thing. They have to find a center. There's the likes of Sam Bennett, who it's hard to imagine him not staying in Florida. There's like John Tavares.
Obligatory bet at his age. He's got a lot of growing to do, right? Like I've never seen
Hey, he's a Stanley Cup champion. Yeah, 18-year-old Stanley Cup champion, Sam Bennett. Yeah. There's like John Tavares, but and he's had a good season. He's 34. Is that something you want to commit to if you're really going as a young guy? But then, so I don't know. The good news is we saw Philip Hedl watering around today, so he clearly is feeling better. But they're being careful with him. It's just
What's the point of playing him at all?
No, I don't expect, just with the way the rhetoric is. I'm not sure. I mean, I suppose you never say never, but the fact he's around, I think, is more the good news, and he's obviously been skating on his own. Anyway, but the point is that like they don't have, if they go forward with Elias Pettersson, they still don't have another big time centerman, and they've got to figure that out. So. Yeah, like it's a very difficult. The degree of difficulty of doing that for next season is now very hard. There was that moment, I think that was part of the argument of just finding a way to move on from Besser. And if you like, there was a first rounder on the table. Like, you take that first rounder, you turn it around, and you go find a centerman. You're moving your story forward, and in a way, and like they executed that well with Phil Pronek. I think Marcus Pettersson has been a good defenseman for them. Did they pay too much? I don't know. But the point is that they've done this, take the first and turn it around, flip to something else, move more than once, and they've done it reasonably well. But I don't think that window is there because they're going to have to make a decision with Besser, and I think they continue to hope that the idea of Besser liking it being here, which is clear, and we talked about it, and he still loves it here. I said, are you thinking at all about how these next 2 weeks are going to go? And he's like, no, I'm trying not to. Like, I'm trying to focus on what I'm doing. And he made the joke. I'm talking about he kept saying these kids, and I just kind of looked at him. He goes, I know. And he's like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I guess I'm an old guy now. And I just laughed and like, tell me about it.
The legacy of this team sort of overvaluing its chances at the trade deadline and not getting assets for pieces that really would have helped them move forward out of some misguided desperation of making some sort of desperate playoff run is, unfortunately, that list is growing. Look, we should wrap it up here. I know you've got stuff to do. I only raised this because it just popped into my mind as we were talking about things. I usually put all this stuff from 82 up because that's sort of not when my fandom ended, but as I got into a professional career, I tried to be more objective. But got some great merchandise here from my old high school, Seacove. Go Seahawks, from a wonderful teacher out there by the name of Raymond Yip. But one of the things that struck me is when I went there to see him, it was the last time I was in my old high school was 1994, and it was for a 10-year reunion, and we'd planned this, and we'd planned the night. It was Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final against the Rangers.
What a game!
Oh, I know. Well, no one showed up, right? Like a few people came later, but I just think of, from 1970 to 1982, it was like that came out of nowhere. 1994 kind of came out of nowhere. 2011 didn't really come out of nowhere, but there was a slow build. But since then, there's been nothing. And as I was back in my old high school, I was thinking of that night in 1994 and how little hope there has been apart from the Alain Vigneault. I mean, I guess you can talk about West Coast Express as well, but honestly, these fans deserve better. And going through this process again of like, well, where are we? We have a couple of good pieces, but the team's really incomplete, and it's a different general manager and different coach. It would be maddening to be a long-time Canucks season ticket holder. I honestly don't know how they do it.
Yeah, I don't know either, because even 10 years ago, I suppose, which is the first post Gillis year, like this was still a team that was considered one of the kind of strong organizations in the league, and now I just think they're an afterthought. They're soon going to be the only team in the league without a practice facility. They just seem stuck. They have had 3 playoff runs in 10 years. Like, it's just not that impressive.
No, and frankly, we'll talk about this more as we get closer to the offseason. You mentioned Tavares, and you go, 34, do you really want to do that? You also could say, as a 34-year-old who's going to be looking for big money, why would you come here?
Yeah.
That's the other issue, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the flip side of it. So.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We got 2 games over the weekend. You can go to theprovince.com, vancouversun.com, sign up for Canuck Report. All of Patrick and Ben's content will be delivered to you. Thank you for your thoughts, Patrick. Thank you for your time, everyone. We will talk to you next week.